Emma Norris said, perfection is the mountain that has no peak. What that means to me is we can keep climbing and climbing and climbing and say, I'm almost there, I'm almost there. And every time we get close, we move the target further away. So it might look like self-sabotage. It might look like getting ill. It might look like, oh, that's okay, or like not celebrating your actual wins. But if you can relate to this perfectionism thing, stick with me. I am Karen Seltz. I am your host. This is Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. This is the last show of the year of 2022, and I'm so happy that you've joined. I have had this journey with perfectionism for as long as I can remember. I grew up thinking like I was never enough, and my parents demanded a lot of me, and I don't remember ever quite reaching the mark. And I'll give you an example. I brought home all A's, an all A report card. I think I was in 10th grade. And my father was a high school teacher. I'm going to back up just a little bit. My brothers were like D and F students, and I was the youngest. And I was so excited. It was my first all A report card. And I brought it home and I'm like, Dad, look, I got all A's. And I was so excited. And I wanted him to say, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. You did it. And you know what he said? Only one A plus. Honest, I swear to you, that's what he said. And I was devastated. It was like a dagger in my heart. Like finally, I had reached that mark of perfection and it wasn't recognized. And what I realized was I was, of course, putting my worth and my value outside of myself. I was putting it in what my parents thought of me, what my peers thought of me. And that continued most of my life. I remember when I became a parent and I chose to parent a different way than my mother, she was very offended by that. And I remember she had a picture of me with my baby, and next to me was this book. It was Unconscious Parenting. And she said to me, your cousin and I had a really good laugh about that picture, that you think it's okay to parent your kids that way. And I was devastated. And I'm like, oh, there it is again, like never enough, never enough. And over the course of my years and my journey, what I've noticed and what I've realized was that I am the only one that can approve of myself. And as long as I am out there looking for something out here, I'm never going to find it. And it's always going to feel like a hole. It's always going to feel like I'm not enough. So I sought to kind of reintegrate all those fractured pieces. And I heard this story. I can't remember her name right now. Her first, Debbie Ford, I think was her name. And she talked about, when we're young, we start to reject certain pieces of ourselves. Like being selfish, for example, is if you're selfish, I'm not going to love you. That's what I heard in my mind. My mom never said those words, but that's what I made up. So if you're selfish, you're not lovable, is what I made that to mean. So I went out of my way to be a giver, to be generous, to go above and beyond, to make everybody else happy and put myself last. Well, and as you may or may not know, when you do that long enough, you build up a shit ton of resentments. And also, you start telling yourself subconsciously, I don't matter as much as other people. And so my self-esteem got lower and lower and lower until I felt like I was absolutely nothing unless somebody was recognizing me. So just starting to take back those things like, okay, what do I want? Like even the day that I first asked myself that question, or somebody else asked me that question, I'm like, I don't need anything. I'm okay. I don't want anything. What do you want? Ugh. Now it's so unlike me to be like that. People that know me well, they're like, what, you? I'm like, yeah, me. And then I would be judging people's choices if they said they wanted to do something that I thought was stupid or lame, whatever it was, not good enough, not highbrow, not this, not that. I was judging them. And judgment is literally poison. It is poison for your mind, poison for your body. And imagine thinking that my choice would have been better than somebody else's, but that I mattered so little, that what I had to say mattered so little that I couldn't say anything. I mean, it's a dichotomy, and it creates stress in the body. So this perfectionism thing, it plays out in so many different ways. A lot of people will try really, really hard to be the best at something or at everything. Other people will just give up. They're like, well, I'm never going to reach this point, so I'm just going to quit while I'm ahead. That way, it doesn't mean anything about me because I didn't give it my best. Because if I really wanted to do that thing, I could have. So we are in this type of denial. And I've done both over the course of my lifetime. I've been in both different schools of thought, and it's shown up both ways. And what I'm going to invite you to do with me today is to start asking yourself these questions. Because if you've listened to me for any time, or if you've listened to anybody who talks about the brain, you know that 95% of all of our beliefs and behaviors and feelings are running on an unconscious program, which means it's below our level of consciousness. We're not even aware that we believe these things. And a belief is simply a thought that you continue to think over and over and over until you no longer think it. You just believe it, you accept it as a fact, and you surrender to whatever it tells you. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again because I love this. Right smack dab in the middle of the word belief is a 3-letter word, lie, L-I-E, lie. Beliefs are not facts. Our ego mind will try to convince us that that belief is 100% true. And I'm going to invite you to question it. Because if it were a fact, it would be a fact universally. It would be a fact not only for you, but for everybody else. So if you're not worthy, then nobody's worthy. If you can't do whatever it is that you want to do, then nobody could possibly do that. So if you can find just one exception to that belief that you've held, you've disproven it. And the ego never, ever questions itself. The second you start to question it, it's kind of like a narcissist. You question a narcissist, their story is going to go, it's going to crumble. Same thing with the ego. You question it, it doesn't make sense. It parades as logic. But when you start to question it and poke holes in that logic, you can see it. You shine a light on it and you're like, oh, wait, I can't believe I ever believed that. And then once you get to that point, you can't unknow that, which is a beautiful place to be. So anytime you get stuck in some kind of belief, like I always, or I never, or life is, whatever it is for you, life isn't fair. Any of those beliefs, whether they're universal or they're specifically for you, like that you hold about yourself, start questioning them. Like, is that really true? Is there an exception to this? Can I find one exception to this? Is there one other person that isn't living the same law? Like money. Let's take money for an example. It's a good one. So this is funny. You know, Facebook, they have those quizzes. I took one of those. It was a name test. And it said in 2023, Karen will be a millionaire. And this woman that I went to high school with said, oh, I wouldn't want to be a millionaire. They tend to be snooty. I'm like, oh, interesting, right? Isn't that fascinating? So many other people are like, yeah, this is awesome. Of course you are going to be a millionaire, like whatever. They were affirming it. And she's like, I wouldn't want that. And then I'm like, okay, that's fascinating, because if that were true, then there could not be one single millionaire around, not one, that was not snooty, that was generous, for example, that was kind, that was loving. So my question, if I wanted to play with this, if it were me and that belief were coming up, I'd be like, okay, is that really true? How many millionaires do I know? Number one, we might know a lot. The ones that are not snooty might not talk about it, right? Like, we don't know. So of the ones that we really do know, how many of them are generous? How much more money do they give away every year than we make, right? Like, think about that. The ability to influence other people becomes so massive when you have more resources to draw from. So I'm just having that as a belief, like throwing it out there, because we all have these triggers. One of mine was not using my voice. Like, who do you think you are? Like, I wanted to sing and dance and play and be an actress and be on stage. And my mom would say, who do you think you are? Do you think you're better than other people, that you deserve to be up there? You know, just these little things. So I learned to not speak, to not use my voice, until now look what I do. Until, you know, we do the work. When we do the inner work, we go back to a lot of times what we wanted to do when we were little. And I loved to tell jokes. I loved to be funny. I loved to be the center of attention. Yep, I'll say it. I don't care. Whatever. Look what I do. I teach video, for example. So think about, like, when you were little, if nobody was watching, what did you do? Or what did you want to be? What did you dream about being? Until somebody said, oh, you can't be that. That's unrealistic. Or you can't make any money at that. Or who do you think you are? Whatever the stories are. Now, I am here to tell you this. Write this down, because this is really important. You cannot do it wrong. You just can't do it wrong. It's impossible. There are no mistakes in God's world. And we'll all say, oh yeah, you're wrong. You're wrong, Karen. I made this mistake. Well, I believe that every single thing that you do will be used for you, for your growth and development. And the other people, the other actors in your story created that. Like, so if you did something to somebody, for example, they needed that for their growth and evolution too. There was some kind of lesson that they were ready to learn, and you played a role for them. And that's not to say you're not responsible for any harm you caused, because you are, and you get to clean that up. But at the same time, don't beat yourself up for 40 years over something. Like, clean it up, say, you know, make amends, do whatever, and then love on yourself and say, I see you did the best you could. You're lovable no matter what you've done. And there are no mistakes in God's world. I know there aren't. This is something that it brings me a lot of comfort, and it doesn't let me off the hook, because I mean, I recently wrote a letter to a woman that I did something to in high school. I did something horrific to this girl, and it's been eating me alive for years. And I finally looked her up and found her and wrote her a letter. And I didn't need anything. I didn't want anything from her. I don't think I gave her a way to contact me. But I wanted her to know that she did nothing wrong. She did nothing to deserve the thing that I did. So finally, I can let it go. I can let it go and move on, and trust that whatever happened led her on a path that she wouldn't have been on otherwise. And it certainly led me on a different path. I became a much more compassionate person and a lot more conscious of my actions. So when you look back at things that you thought were mistakes, and if you look at it from the lens, like, what did I learn and who did I become because this happened, or because I did this, because I behaved this way? Because sometimes it has to be loud for us to learn the lesson, at least for me. Like, I don't learn a lesson unless I feel like crap about myself. And I don't know about you, but if I felt nothing, I would probably do the same thing again. And sometimes I have. Sometimes I've done things I'm like, oh, this is sort of familiar, right? But I get to go back and clean it up and then love on myself. Like, okay, all right, now what? Who do you choose to be right now? What's your choice? I love, in A Course in Miracles in the Way of Mastery, this concept of choose again. So if you don't like what you're experiencing, so what? Make a different choice. It is that simple. I remember my niece was getting married to somebody that lived in a different state, and she hadn't spent a ton of time with him, and she was going to move down there with him. And she's like, what if I'm making a mistake? I said, well, then you'll choose again. You'll make a different choice. I mean, this is the United States. You're not stuck. You'll make a different choice. You'll choose again. and it won't be a mistake. And she ended up getting divorced, but she had a son already from somebody else. And this guy's parents are like the grandparents to her son. So it wasn't a mistake. I mean, they still fly him out all the time. It was beautiful. So it wasn't a mistake. And she gave herself permission to mess up. So when I am coaching people, for example, to show up authentically on video, what I ask them to do is to take one messy, imperfect action step every single day. Like take a step. Who cares what you look like? And when we're showing up on video, it's all about the other person. How do I want the other person to feel? What do I want to leave them with? Like for me, in this particular message, it's you're perfect the way you are. You can't, their perfection is ridiculous, right? We all know that. It is the mountain with no peak. That's what I started with. And it is the moving target, like poof, 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 we'll never reach it. And you are perfectly imperfect. You are as you are created. So stop trying, just be, show up, connect to your heart, and stop making it about you. So if you are, doesn't matter what you do, but if you are an entrepreneur, for example, and you want to show up on video, you get to connect to your heart and say, okay, what is it that I wish somebody would have said to me when I was, whatever problem you're solving, when I was first starting out in real estate? What do I wish somebody would have told me? What, how would I like to be treated? What would I like to know about myself? And connect to them through your heart, like from your learned experience, from your wisdom, from your compassion. And then it's not about you and you're not nervous. And that's the biggest thing. When you're nervous, you are focused 100% on yourself. That's it. That's it. And it's normal. So if you are nervous, don't beat yourself up. Just take a breath. And what I do is I say, God, universe, source, spirit, speak through me. What would you have me say? And I know that my message, whatever it is, will reach whoever it's supposed to reach. I don't need to do anything. I just need to open my heart, open my mouth, open my mind, and let the words flow out and just be the conduit. That's it. It's so easy. And then I get to just laugh and have fun and just be along for the ride, be present. So if you have had a journey with perfectionism, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear, like, what are you letting go of? And what is it keeping you safe from? And the question you get to ask yourself is, if I'm not perfect, then just fill in the blank. It's not a question. Fill in the blank. If I'm not perfect, then this, then my mom won't love me. And if my mom doesn't love me, then that means I'm not lovable. And if I'm not lovable, I don't deserve to exist. So just keep following it down until you get to like the root cause of whatever your issue is. And then you can be aware of it. So every time you start feeling like you need to be perfect, you're like, well, if I'm not perfect, it means I don't deserve to exist. And that really literally makes no sense. Like, would you say that to your child or your best friend? I'm sorry, you're not perfect. You don't deserve to be here. I'm going to kill you now. Like, well, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But we treat ourselves like that because it's unconscious. We don't know we're doing it. So fill in the blank. If I'm not perfect, it means this about me. Or then this will happen. Whatever it is, it might be you will be rejected by people, or people will find out you're a fraud or an imposter, whatever it is. Just follow it down, keep going. And you can do that really with any fears or any triggers that come up. I've mentioned this before, but one of my trigger words is selfish. So if I'm selfish, that means that I'm less than other people. And if I'm less than other people, I'm not as worthy as other people. I don't deserve good things. If I don't deserve good things, I might as well not be here. Whatever. It might go down to like, I don't deserve to exist or take up space. My two main ones are I'm not lovable and I'm not worthy. Like almost all my fears boil down to those two, or at least they used to back when I did this exercise last, which was many years ago. Maybe I'll get to do it again. How fun. I love exercises. So try it out. And really, what do you think you're going to get by being perfect? What are you trying to gain? Power, praise, pleasure, safety, inclusion, like significance, whatever it is, that is also a belief, and it's also a lie, because you're not going to get that. The only person that can give you those things is you. And I believe your relationship with your higher power. So you get to work on that on your own. And how else can you feel significant? How else can you feel safe? How else can you derive pleasure or whatever it is that you want or you think you're going to get from being perfect? So play with those things. And if you have any inkling, if you want to be on video, if you want to show up on video, connect to the heart, be authentic, please get my free guide. It's super cool. It's 5 ways to boost your confidence on video. You can grab it on my website, which is KarenSeltz, my name.com. And I will see you right here next week on Irresistible You. Happy New Year.